The manifestation of the sons of God, chapter 22, the last kingdom. We've entered a very precipitous time as we've seen the banking institutions and the economies of this world shaken. It's one more sign of the days that we're walking in. There's been a fatalistic view in the rank and file of the religious community that God's plan for the last days has been precisely mapped out. But I don't believe this is really the truth. There's much that will be determined as his sons work in concert with him to see the wrap-up of this age. Throughout the scriptures, and especially in the book Revelation, we get an overall view of God's plan for the latter days. However, what is not spelled out as clearly is the path from point A to point B. It's the fine detail of how this all plays out in these days right before us that we've actually entered into, that are still in a state of flux. The administration of God's plan on the earth is still largely dependent upon the actions and interactions of his sons, for God himself has limited himself to move through human instruments, and it's for this reason alone that the last chapters have yet to be written. Often the word has come in the Spirit during the early hours of the morning. Write the last chapters, my sons. Write the last chapters. We have a strong inkling of the mind and heart of the Father for the days ahead of us. We know that the judgments will come as a visitation of the fire of God. Isaiah 66:16. Yet there is much to be determined concerning how this will all be orchestrated during this time. It has been clearly evident that we will see a judgment upon the systems of this world that are in control. Whether it's the banking system, the media, or the structure of governments, all are being satanically driven and controlled by the hosts of evil. These agencies have manipulated a control over people far beyond what anyone has understood. In Daniel 2, we read that God has decreed that judgment shall come upon this system that no amount of manipulation will be able to thwart. Let's take a minute and read Daniel 2:40-45. Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things, so like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. In it you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong, and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all of these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation trustworthy. This vision pertains to the various world governments as portrayed by the gold, silver, bronze, and iron. We know that many governments have come and gone, yet the vision of this last image speaks of the last days, the days which we have entered into. The feet of this image is comprised of common clay and iron, and as the scriptures point out, the iron did not mix with that of common clay. The iron signifies the seed of Satan, which is attempted to mix and merge within the seed of man. And as it mentions in the book of Daniel, this is a mixture that cannot blend. This is the last kingdom which is yet to be dealt with. Every other kingdom in the vision of Daniel 2 has come and gone. But there is yet to be a fulfillment of this last one, a kingdom which is born of common clay and iron. We will see the judgment of this last image both in the spirit and on the natural plane as we've never seen before. This is the kingdom which is spawned over the face of the earth today. It is not the United States, nor is it Russia, France, Germany, or any other individual country. We're speaking of a world system which exists during these last days. It is the kingdom of this world system, that which exists within and throughout every government on the face of this earth at this time, which the vision of Daniel speaks of. Unbeknownst to most, the seed and influence of this mixture of iron and clay has permeated every country, government, and every form of media that exists today. This final kingdom is poised to be destroyed by the stone cut out of the mountain. And this stone is destined to become a great and mighty kingdom, the kingdom of the Heavenly Father, His sons. This mixture of iron and clay concerns the Nephilim, a pervading force in the earth today. For those of you who are students of the Word, you probably have had a cursory understanding of the Nephilim. But for those of you who do not, the Nephilim represent the seed born out of the unholy union of the fallen angels as they mixed with the daughters of men. In the book of Genesis, in some translations, it refers to these fallen angels as the sons of God. But this has no relevance whatsoever with what God is establishing within His people during this day, which concerns Romans 8. If you look on the internet, all you see is more and more focus and propagation of lies concerning the sons of God. There's a great deal of focus and interest in this evil seed, but little, if any, real perception concerning what God is really doing. For we're speaking of the true sons of God, those patterned after Christ, as referenced in the book of Romans. That which has been born of this holy-unholy union, the Nephilim, were known in the Old Testament as the men of renown. These were men of great feats and capabilities. They could do things that were just almost supernatural. And who are they in this hour? Well, they're the preeminent leaders, rulers, and men of power, wealth, and influence, and they mostly function behind the scene. But they're also comprised of many religious leaders who work in miracles and signs. Joshua faced the Nephilim in the land of Canaan, and you can read of these men of renown throughout the Greek lore. Many of these accounts were not mythical stories. They were actual accounts on one level or another of these men of renown who were born of this union of the fallen angel with woman. To this day, much of our warfare in the spirit is dealing with these spirits, the spirits of the Nephilim, as they move within and throughout the sons of darkness. Their mission, of course, is to manipulate and control the affairs of men in this day. Where do you find men of such great evil and great capability? Where else but in government, banking, the media, virtually every venue that has the ability to control or manipulate the minds and hearts of the people that live in the world today. Matthew 24, unless these days are cut short, no life will be saved. But for the sake of the elect, the days will be cut short. We're in that time, even though we may not yet understand it, but God is cutting the days short. There is still much yet to be done, and the prophecy in Isaiah comes up, can a nation be born in a day? I don't think we have a choice. In many respects, a nation must be born in a day. What's the end goal of the Nephilim and the satanic seed? To destroy humanity. What else? In many ways, we've been in a race that God's sons have not known or understood that they were even in. It can seem as if there has been a race in the Spirit to see who will control the destiny and the affairs of men. Who will manifest first, the satanic seed or God's sons? Well, of course we know the answer, for we know what God is doing. Let the darkness pursue after themselves. We know we are but walking out a destiny and fulfillment that was completed so very long ago. Even though there is a destiny and fulfillment the sons of God are walking out, there is yet much that is to be written in these chapters as we see the completion of this age, written by the sons. Understand, the Nephilim have been looking to establish a race of beings, call them the sons of darkness. This has been unfolding, a flip side, if you will, while the Father has been bringing forth his sons, the sons of the living God. We know the promise or intent of the Father is that his instruments, his sons, will bind and bring to judgment the principalities, the powers, thrones, and dominions and rulers of this present darkness. For their judgment has already been measured out. We are but the executors of the Father's will. The satanic hosts have only been the unwitting tool of God in seeing his sons brought to birth. For we have come to the time, a time of finality and a time of completion. When Christ ascended to the Father's presence, he saw Satan fall. The judgment upon the spirits of wickedness have been sealed. It was done, completed. However, the judgments have awaited the maturing of the sons of God, who would enact and execute those judgments which have been written. Psalms 149. When Joshua and Caleb went into Canaan to spy out the land, they saw that the shadow or protection of the giants, the Nephilim, had been removed by the Lord. Read Numbers 13. The protection that was a covering to these Nephilim, the satanic seed of this earlier day, had been removed, and they were now vulnerable. And so it is again at this time. The protection of the Nephilim in the earth is being removed, for their judgments have been sealed. It is at this time that we will see the judgment upon this last image in the vision of Daniel, for the judgment has begun to stream from Zion. We're in, if you will, a mop-up operation of seeing the heavens and the earth cleansed of the filth and evil that has so saturated this world. And it's time, and it's now. You will see and create the fulfillment of Daniel's vision as this last kingdom, the kingdoms of this world, are brought down in judgment. Daniel 7:21 and 22 also present another picture of what we're living and experiencing during this time. Quote, I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them until the Ancient of Days came. Judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one, and the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. What a sigh of relief. You can almost feel it in the heavens when this begins to unfold. For it's been a long season, and we've heard the prayers in the Spirit from the cloud of witnesses going up before God. How long, O Lord? How long before you will avenge us? We've been in a time when the warfare in the Spirit has attempted to wear down the saints, yet we know that the judgments have been passed. His saints will possess the kingdom. This will not continue to seemingly stay out of reach, for this is the time of possessing the kingdom. We're in a concurrent time of prophetic fulfillment on different planes of prophecy and Scripture. Whether it's Daniel 2, Daniel 7, or the book of Revelation, it leaves no doubt that an acceleration of judgment and a release upon God's people is now coming. Now is the appointed time. It's a time for fullness. It's a time for judgment. Now is a time that we will see a fulfillment of the book of Ephesians with the execution of the administration of power upon this age. More and more we've been aware of the canopy of control that exists over the nations on the face of this earth by the principalities and powers. They have wielded a control over people far beyond anyone's recognition. There has been an inability for people to change because the veil of darkness that exists over this world system, this cloud of deception and restraint which has been perpetrated and fostered by the satanic host, has literally created a veil over the perception of so many. This has prevented the sons from becoming. And we've come to the time that the judgments of God shall break the stranglehold, and the shackle over men's eyes shall fall, and his people shall see him, and they shall change. The greatest evangelism to be experienced is yet to come forth. We've come to the day that the sons of God will bind the satanic powers of darkness that have blinded the eyes of his people, and whole regions of the world will come alive to the Spirit. We're not talking about just one here or one there, but thousands. Literally, whole geographic regions will change. It is a time of the greatest change and transformation we've ever seen, because this blindness that has existed shall be lifted. It is time that the spirits of wickedness and the sons of darkness shall lead the evil in a procession into the pit of darkness for which they've been destined. Have you ever driven through an area and noticed the peculiarity of it? Have you sensed the changes in the energy? If you have, then you're becoming aware of the different spirits that exist in different localities. You can drive through a region where perhaps a tragic event took place, and you will find that the energy signature of that still remains upon the land. What I'm talking about are the spirits that have governed and controlled whole regions of this vast planet we live on. What follows hand in hand most often are the restraints, conditionings, and oppressions which rest upon those who live in those areas. The true gospel of the kingdom is not about sending out missionaries, sending out Bibles, or distributing tracts. The gospel of the kingdom, which for the most part has not even begun to unfold, will happen in concert with the release of the power of God, which will bind the kings of the earth. There is no gospel of the kingdom without the release of the authority and dominion of Christ as is exercised through God's sons. Anything else is partial at best. We speak chaos, discord, and confusion into the camp of the enemy, for this is the day of judgment. As the psalmist in the 149th Psalm wrote, to execute upon them the judgments written. The judgments have been written from the foundations of the earth, but they've been waiting for a people, God's sons, who would rise in the Spirit and become. They've been waiting for you and I. God's sons are arising, and they will finish the last chapters of this book and complete the ministry of Christ. You must realize that we're coming to live and function in and from a world of spirit. This is a whole new life and a whole new existence. The judgments of this day come forth as God's sons, his mouthpiece, usher them in.